Hello, welcome to the West Coast Biased. I'm Andrew Nemec, joined as always by Jason Suke and Nemec. Got off to a rough start, and we'll wait a little bit to let people get rolling in here.
Yeah.
But generally speaking, you go into a big game and you need breaks.
Yeah.
And that's why we give people some time, because we got the echo chamber going, which I've now closed out. Generally speaking, when you go into a game and you give up 7 points on the first play on a pick six, a fumble that puts them at the 6-yard line early, you're in huge trouble. And it just seemed like this whole thing snowballed. I don't necessarily think, watching again, that Indiana is so much more, air quotes here, talented than Oregon. Just like last year, while I thought Ohio State was the better team, and we both said that in the real podcast, that wasn't the pro duck. Here's the pro duck angle. We both picked Indiana to win. Not like this, but we both picked Indiana to win. We said Indiana with their coaching staff is the better team right now. Last year, I thought Ohio State was the better team, but Oregon wraps down their leg in back-to-back games in all three phases, or back-to-back season-ending games in all three phases. And Duck fan not happy tonight. Before, we'll get into later that, hey, this wasn't as bad a season as people think, but I get why Duck fan is so angry tonight.
Yeah, I'm looking here at the comments, whether it's on my Twitter or certainly here on the YouTube chat, and there's not a lot of positive thought. There's not a lot of we'll see you next year. It's a lot of doom and gloom right now, and I get it. There's I don't know what you take out of that, with the final ended up being 55. You got a double nickel laid on you. Second year
56. They end up making the extra point.
Excuse me, 56.
Against Deuce.
If you want to look on you want to put a positive spin on it, you got your ass kicked in the quarterfinals last year, and this year you got your ass kicked in the semifinals. So it's like you're getting blown out. So next year you'll get your ass kicked in the national title. And then the year after that, you win the whole thing. So, put all your money in 2 years from now winning a national championship. No, in all seriousness, I get all the negativity, but it's tough to say a team that lost one game all year and now lost two to the national champion. Well, more than likely, right? The national champion. And last year, the only loss that you had was to the national champion. And last year's team, Ohio State, no one's going to debate whether or not that was the best team in the country. And
you beat that national
championship. And you beat that national championship team, right? And so this year, it's like no one's going to right now debate you. I think I saw the early line, Indiana 7.5 over Miami, and that's a home game against Miami. It's a home game for Miami. It's in Miami's home stadium, and they're favored by 7.5. So look, if these are the losses, I understand that those are hard to swallow because the way they go down. But this idea that this is some sort of programming unraveling game, I would also like to point out that we said the same things the last couple of years about Mario Cristobal, right? We also said the same thing about James Franklin, and James Franklin got fired, and Mario Cristobal is playing for a national title. So, we said this about Dabo, we said it about Kirby. You're always the guy that can't win the big one until you can. So does Dan Lanning have something to prove? Absolutely. Do I get why fans don't love the staff? Do I get why fans are now a little concerned that you're losing both coordinators and you're promoting from within, right? You're promoting tight ends coaches and assistant defensive coordinators. And I get all that. But if I'm going to try to take a look at a glass half full, and I'm just trying to put a spin on it, because honestly, I don't know how you spin an ass kicking like that, where you play the worst game of the year against the best team that you've played, and you get embarrassed on national TV. And we'll talk about why that happened. But I mean, it's hard to put a positive spin on what happened. You were embarrassed. You didn't show up. You shit the bed, and Indiana just made you look completely inferior. But this idea that this is a program deflating game, I've been covering the Ducks now for 22-ish years, doing my stupid radio show here in Portland. And the number of times that I have heard that this is a program unraveling game, if I had money for every time I heard that, I'd be a rich man. Everything from, you'll never get back to a national title. Well, you've been to two of them. oh, well, the Chip Kelly thing was merely a fluke, and look what happened to Mark Helfrich. And then, oh, coaches are leaving and no one's going to want to coach here. And, this program has survived. And I will tell you that the infrastructure that they've built and the way Lanning recruits and the budget they have in the NIL and the cool factor of the school, Oregon will be relevant. Will they win a national title? I don't know. Most of the time when you recruit at this level and you hit the portal the way you do and you put together these seasons, and I do think it's also important to remember, Lanning has gotten better every year. And I was kind of joking with you'll get your ass kicked next year in the national title and the year after that. There is an element to they have gotten better every year that he has been here. And while this year got microwaved a little bit and that we didn't have this expectation, I've been saying all year I didn't think this was a national championship team. And then you get to the end and you're like, well, maybe, you can kind of see through a prism and, there's no one else that really seems to be that good. Turns out Indiana is that good. And you kind of started to try to find it. But, at the end of the day, the ending was not obviously that what you thought was going to happen, but the actual end place, this is about what I thought. You can actually say that they maybe got a little further than what I thought at the beginning of the year. So get the disappointment. Totally have every right to be disgusted at the effort that was put out there and the execution and all that stuff. But this whole, Dante Moore is not the guy and you need to go find a different quarterback in the portal and, the coordinators stink.
That stuff's all nonsense, man.
And this is all just, that's just, you're just angry. You're angry because you don't know what else to do because you just got embarrassed on national TV.
Well, a few things. I thought that generally speaking, Oregon was again outcoached. And let's talk about it. What do coaches say behind the scenes about specifically Lanning and Lepoy? Somewhat Stein, but definitely Lanning and Lepoy. Yeah. They say they really recruit well. They have a budget. They get guys motivated. They're great at that. They are not great schemers. They are predictable.
Yes.
I have not seen very many in my life, not in high school. I've seen it in high school. I have not seen very many speed outs jumped for a touchdown.
Yeah.
You don't see that unless someone knows it's coming. And I'm not saying they cheated. That's stupid. They scouted Oregon so well, they went, he's going to try to give him an easy throw early, sit on something underneath, sit on something short. He's going to throw one quick. If you watch that play where Pons picks off the first play again, he's sitting on that route. He's sitting on it. If that would have been a double move, dunzo. But they knew he's not going to have enough time because we're going to overwhelm him. He's sitting on a speed out. It's hard to pick a speed out. It is. Yeah. They picked it. Fourth and 2, they ran the ball up the middle with Jay Harris. 4th and 1 in the second half, they ran a pitch play to the outside to Harris again. That's hubris. You cannot do that against Indiana. They showed you that with a faster back, De'Aaron Hill, when you played them earlier in the year. Yeah. So some of those things are really bad. Some of those things are really concerning. But let's take the pick six out of it because that's brutal and really it set the tone. And it's hard to do that. Yeah. Oregon's first drive was really good and really good. Positive in a lot of ways. They addressed 3 or 4 things. Now, as the game wore on, it changed. But they addressed 3 or 4 things that I thought were really important. We said in our preview, the first preview, not the Pro Ducks preview, that Dante Moore had missed that throw underneath because he kept looking deep. They had like a 3rd and 6, 3rd and 7, and he hit Benson underneath on that drag route that had been there all game last game. And he was so afraid to look over the middle and keep his eyes low because he was seeing pass rush that he wouldn't throw that ball. He threw that ball. We talked about the fact they can rip the ball down the seam. And I talked about through the first 6 weeks of the season, they really didn't do that. And they needed to. And they really started to do it against Rutgers was the first time they did it. Yeah. He threw that seam ball to Johnson for a touchdown. No. That's another thing addressed. Indiana did try to blitz different ways. They sent an all-out blitz on that touchdown to Johnson, and the O-line picked it up. Yeah. That's a good sign. They were determined to run the football and ran the ball effectively with their 5th or 6th string running back on that first drive. That first drive, those were 4 things that I know I've talked about this week with people. He's got to be able to see that drag because it's there for a first down. He's got to be able to rip the seam ball. The O-line has to communicate what blitzes are coming. The coaching staff clearly coached them up for that because that first drive, which, as you know, is your most scripted drive, right?
Yeah, 100%.
They ran everything they missed last game and marched down the field and scored. I was really encouraged at that point in the game.
I thought so too. I had that idea of like, okay, like it got off to an awful start. You responded well, 7-7, and you're okay. Deep breath here. You survived it, and nothing good else happened for 3 quarters after that.
Then nothing good happened. And Indiana went down and scored easily. And here's what's concerning: whether or not, and Moore made tons of mistakes on offense, and the offense was overwhelmed again by Indiana. Oregon's defense clearly had no new wrinkles for Indiana's offense, because whether or not Oregon's offense scored every drive, Indiana was going to put up. Now, they wouldn't have put up 56. They would have put up 42 or. And honestly,
that's the part that I'm most surprised about. And look, we can talk about Oregon's offense, and Moore will take a ton of fault. And we can talk about the O-line. I thought you said it in our preview, and it's true. And Duck fan got all mad when we talk about it, but the truth of the matter is, you mentioned their offensive line is 5 interior guys, and 2 of them are playing on the outside. Their tackles haven't been good all year. They've been okay, but against the better teams, there's been issues. There's been an issue at right guard, and Pregnon is really good, and even Poncho at times has been exposed. But you have 2 solid O linemen, and then you've got a wonky guard and 2 tackles that haven't been great all year. And against the better fronts, they've really struggled. And certainly against Indiana, that was another huge issue tonight. But I'm not overly surprised that the offense had their struggles. I'm just not. As we again talked about during the preview, what did I bring up? In the 6 games against the better teams they've played, right? This team has scored 18 and a half points, right? That's who you are. After 14 weeks, the only good team that you scored more than basically 21 points again in regulation. Remember, they only scored 17 against Penn State. The other 2 touchdowns came in double OT. And against Indiana, they scored 20. 7 of those were on the pick 6. You scored 13 points in the first game around. And even though that was a close game, I said all along, I didn't think Oregon was going to score in the 20s. Didn't I? I thought if Oregon if Oregon was going to win this game, it needs to be the way Ohio State lost to Indiana. This had to be 17-13. This had to be 21-17. And so I'm not shocked that the offense had their struggles. I mean, 22 points. Let's be honest. It was not 22 points. The last touchdown was whatever. So let's say even their second touchdown where De'Aaron Hill broke up a 70-yard run. It's like whatever. The game was over, but that has been who your offense has been. The offense largely has. So we can talk about that because that's who you are. Where I am more kind of like, whoa, is the defense. Because we haven't seen this. This is the first time all year the defense got their pants pulled down. And did I think that Indiana's offense was capable of pulling Oregon's pants down quite like that? No, because it didn't happen in the first game, and it didn't, and I didn't think it was going to happen in this one. Now, some of it is when they give you short fields and you turn the ball over and momentum and all that stuff, but I'm just not overly shocked with the way the O-line played, with as rattled as Moore looked, with the running back depth. Here's the other one too about De'Aaron Hill. Like, De'Aaron Hill is a really good back. If you go back and watch that first Indiana game, most of those sacks were covered sacks and running backs not being able to pick up blitzes. De'Aaron Hill did not play a lot in passing situations because he can't
one pass pro snap all
year. So when people were like, why is Jay Harris, who was actually in the portal and then came back, why is he even in the game? Because De'Aaron Hill can't block.
And he doesn't know the plays.
He doesn't know the plays. So you can't have him in there. In fact, Noe Whittington had a great blitz pickup on the one. He's doing it on one leg. So you're not making excuses here because everyone's dealing with injuries. But, when you look at the way the O-line played, the fact that you were playing with one back that could actually stay in the game and try to pass protect, and even then it was a little wonky, and then Moore really got rattled. And this is if you want to take a bigger concern about Dante Moore, who still has all the physical tools in the world and the NFL is still going to love him. If you want a bright side, I think he comes back. I don't think you can let this be your last game, and I don't think you can let the NFL have this be your evaluation.
His last 2 games, clearly, based on play calling, they were so afraid of letting him stand back there and throw, and part of that was the O-line, and part of that is once he makes mistakes,
Yeah.
They become compounding mistakes, and
So
he has shown that.
Yes, I really like Dante Moore. I really do. I like the physical tools, but at this point, it is fair to ask the question, whatever's going on upstairs, whether that's seeing ghosts, whether that's nerves, whether that's whatever, the moment being too big, whatever you want to call that, right? Because I don't know what, it's just some sort of intangible thing, right?
Sure.
There's been enough moments this year where he has risen to the occasion, right? See Penn State, see Iowa. But there's been a couple of these, mainly Indiana and some of those Texas Tech plays, even though they ended up winning that game, where it's fair to ask, what the makeup is. And, another year, I think this ensures that he comes back. So if you want to look at a bright side, Dante Moore coming back, and any of these fans that are out there saying that you need to find a new quarterback. And I mean, you have no idea what you're talking about. You just don't.
Right.
You have absolutely no idea. If you think that Dante Moore shouldn't be the quarterback, and I'm looking here at some of the comments, UCLA dumped Dante for a reason. He lacks the mental makeup to lead Oregon to a natty. Like these stuff. I mean, it's
dumb.
I mean,
it's dumb.
Those I understand those are irrational. Those are irrational, and it's the in the heat of the moment. But those are silly comments. Sure. Dante Moore coming back next year will be one of the Heisman favorites. Oregon will be a top 5 team nationally, I would assume, in the preseason rankings. And
I mean,
they're going next year's team in theory. And I mean, look, on paper, this will be a better team next year than it is this year. Doesn't take away the sting because you got your ass kicked and your quarterback had a horrible game and you got outplayed in all 3 phases, literally all 3 phases. But like I said, if I'm just taking my overall point, I'm not surprised at the offensive struggles. I am surprised at the meltdown, dumb penalties, turnovers, big plays allowed. I'm surprised at the meltdown, and I'm more surprised that the defense didn't show up. It's the first time all year that the defense did not show up, and boy, did they not show up, because Indiana did whatever, and I mean whatever they wanted to do.
Yeah, so efficient, and that's been who they are. And the silver lining, or not the silver lining, it's just the opposite view of the Mendoza stats aren't that great, and he won the Heisman, but statistically, it's nowhere near traditional Heisman seasons. No. He didn't have to be, because he was wildly efficient. I think this, to your point, I think this means Dante Moore comes back. The Penn State game, and the reason Dan Lanning was so emotional and so proud, one, he thought it showed his team could gut out any situation, because that was a really tough situation to be in that big a game. And Dante really got tested, and the knock on Dante was a little bit of maybe he's a little emotionally soft, a little bit. There was some of that. And so that was like, he had everything thrown at him. Remember the play they ended up, I think, winning the game on in overtime. He stepped over the pass rush, kind of around the pass rush of Dennis Sutton, and threw that drag route. I think it was to Gary Bryant Jr. Yeah. You remember that throw against Iowa, that go route to Benson where he hits him, and it's just
he had moments.
He had moments, but those are so now seemingly gone. Yeah. Because the Texas Tech game, we talked about it. What in the world happened in that second half? I get they were ahead. They didn't even try to throw the football. No. And then you go into this game, and I said, maybe they don't trust their O-line so much that they're afraid Dante's going to get hurt. Because Novosad's in now, and you're not winning with Brock Thomas. So maybe that's it. And then you get into this game, and you see when he gets punched in the mouth, metaphorically, he struggles. And this O-line really struggled. And I just want to hammer home, please, 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 every once in a while, and I know I have my takes, every once in a while, I tell people, listen, I'm telling you something. And I said, Noah Sewell is not a first-round draft pick. No chance, no way. I think he's good. He doesn't fit the modern NFL. And I've said very, very early, like before the season started, be wary of this offensive line. They are not as good as people think. And people went, well, Isaiah World had 0 sacks allowed. He had a huge number of penalties, and a bunch of them were false starts in the Mountain West. And a good scout will tell you, when you see a guy, a tackle, jumping early to get that drop back, that step back, he's doing it because he doesn't trust himself to have the speed to get back. What was Isaiah World's issue all season? Speed rushers that took the edge from him and just went around him. Harkey, same thing. And they even moved Harkey inside to guard at times this year.
Yeah.
Those tackles were not good. And sometimes when I say, and when you say, we're telling you, and people were saying, this is the Joe Moore award, they got robbed. This was nowhere near the best offensive line in the country. They had phases, and they were great in the run. They were bullies because they were huge. They averaged like 325 pounds.
Yeah.
But if you got them in a situation where they had to drop back 3rd and 8, they were average for most of the year.
Well, and this was it. This was honestly because I watch a lot of O-line play, and it's funny. So Pregnon, who I think is maybe the best guard in the draft, he will
very, very good.
He will be a very high pick,
and I think Poncho is a really good guard.
I do. I don't. Center. He's not a center. He's not athletic enough to be a center, and he's coming back. But I thought they played their worst games against Texas Tech. I thought Texas Tech for the first time made those two guys look average. And I think this game, this was the worst game of the year that I saw Isaiah World and Alex Harkey both play. I thought they really got exposed, and I know some injuries happened with those two guys, but I also thought the interior really got picked on. When you watch O-line play a lot, it's playing on levels, right? So when you're passing stuff off in the run game or even in the pass game, you have to be on the same level, or the tackle needs to be behind the guard, right?
Right.
So if I'm the tackle and the guard and I get push up the field, and now that interior stunt comes in, if I'm playing on a different level than my guard or tackle, I can't pass anything off, right? Hopefully that makes sense to people that are listening, right? Like you can't. And so I think at times when the tackles are really getting beat across their face, it can make your guard play even look that much poorer. And I think Texas Tech kind of exposed that in the last game, and Indiana did an even better job at that. And at the beginning, when Cignetti was talking about not getting lined up properly, I think they were getting caught in some of those things, and there were some holes, and Oregon was actually running the ball pretty effectively early on. And once they got those things buttoned up and they got their run fits figured out, Oregon didn't run the ball much at all, except for the one long touchdown or the one long run, and it was over. So it was a really, as bad as Dante Moore played, and believe me, Dante Moore was bad, the offensive line might have been worse. Yes. And then you throw in the fact that you had a back in there that shouldn't have been in there on pass protection, and that's one of those funky plays. He doesn't take a good setup. He needs to be up further in the pocket. Dante Moore doesn't see him, and that's a fluke fumble, and that's just a guy that, that's like if I get a new center in the game and he's not used to the center exchange with the quarterback and there's a fumble, whose fault is it? Well, I don't know whose fault is it, but those two guys haven't played together, so I don't know who's responsible.
I had a running back, former running back, text me that's on Deer Hill, just so you know. So just a heads up. I mean, I don't know, but that's what I was told.
And there's a reason why Deer Hill didn't play as much as we thought he should have this year. This is the other thing we talk about a lot with running backs is we see running backs run, and he's the most dynamic runner in that backfield. And so people are like, oh, why isn't he playing more? Because he doesn't understand blocking concepts. He doesn't understand route trees. And so when you can't trust someone to do those little things, it's hard to put them on the field just to say, hey, we think you can break some runs. Well, today he was forced into action. And it's funny that something that he hadn't been on the field all year for rears its ugly head. And really with that turnover, I think that was the one that made it 21-7. It kind of felt like at that point the game was over. It was like, okay, you just gifted the best team in the country 14 points. Yeah, where do you go from there?
And they're not a team that makes mistakes. No. You can play even with them. Yeah. It's hard to get them on their heels.
And they don't give up big explosive plays. And again, I've been harping on it for weeks. Oregon's offense is not explosive. It's not. Against the better teams, they don't score 40 points. They don't score 30 points. So at that point, it was kind of a death sentence. So it's weird in that all of Oregon's weaknesses, right? If you've had a kryptonite, your tackle play, right? The Deer Hill being talented but not being able to be an every down back, Dante Moore's composure and maybe the nerves, all of those things that you thought were kind of the bugaboos of your offense all came to roost. And then on top of it, the one thing that hasn't been a bugaboo all year, your defense just decides to pick the game to not show up. and just get shredded. I mean, Mendoza at one point, he had more touchdowns than he had. In fact, yeah. So he ended with 3 incompletions and 5 touchdowns. Like I understand that Indiana's offense is good, but that's the one I keep going back to. And I don't know. I've had some people on here ask, what about Lapoy and taking another job and Stein taking another job? Those things aren't ideal.
They cared. But it's not like
they cared, but
don't care about these kids anymore.
But at the same time, like that's not ideal. And I don't know how much any of that plays. I couldn't tell you. If Lane Kiffin stays at Ole Miss and they're not dealing with their shit, does Ole Miss beat Miami? Maybe. I mean, that was a 1-possession game, one at the end. I don't know. Yeah. Does any of that stuff play a role? I don't. It does. I don't know how much. But that was just a shit rolls downhill and you're at the bottom of it and everything unraveled and you picked the worst time to have it unravel on national television. And, people are going to love, and believe me, I get this. People are going to love to bury the Ducks. And I totally get why, right? I really like Dan Lanning. I do. I'm not a Duck fan. I'm certainly not a Duck homer, far from it. But I like Dan Lanning. I talk to him. He comes on my show where my radio station is the home of the Ducks. And I like Dan. I did not like Chip Kelly. If anyone listened to me when Chip Kelly was here, I thought Chip Kelly was an ass. Yep. He was actually probably my least favorite person that I've ever covered, with the exception of maybe Gary Anderson.
And not only real quick, because it doesn't really matter, but not only was he an ass, but that type of like holier than thou, you're a waste of our time. That creeped into the athletic department so badly where you'd email people that you were supposed to be like media relations folks and they would crap on you. We don't have time for you. It got really, really bad. And that permeated through the whole athletic department. And so it was not fun to deal with. Not a fan at all. So it's when I say that I like Dan Lanning, I like him as I think he's a good coach, and I think he's a good person. I think he's a good program builder, and I enjoy him. Yeah. I get why that shtick. I get why people don't like Oregon. I get why. I totally understand it. Lanning he's brash. He can be obnoxious, the rah, ripping zins and the pregame stuff, and today we're the effing bowl and the hammer and nail, and he talks shit. He does. Yeah. And his players talk it. And, Bryce Betcher's out there pumping his chest when they're down by 35. DeCorian Moore's pointing for a first down. You're down by 30. I get it. Mm-hmm. I get why people revel in watching Oregon get their ass kicked, because it's the same thing with Miami, right? When you've got that sort of bravado and we're better than you and we're damn different here and all of that, when you're going to play that role and you want to be the alpha male, be prepared that when someone steps up and kicks your ass, they're going to make fun of you because you do kind of look like a fool. Mm-hmm. When you present yourself, when you're Brock Lesnar and you go into the ring and you're puffing your chest and you think you're the baddest guy on the block, and then someone, takes you apart and knocks your ass out, Conor McGregor gets humbled, it becomes a meme. And this will be a meme. Unfortunately, this will be something that people for the next 365 days will make fun of. And I totally get it. And I totally get why. But if you think that this ends something at Oregon and this is the downfall, and that this somehow the program is taking steps backwards, then that's just you having hate. And I get it. But this isn't a step back. Sure. Everything that this program is doing and the way it's set up, it's in today's world of NIL and today's world of flexibility, and you kind of need that that secret sauce. This program is set up to be fine in the future, despite 2 years in a row now where it looks bad. I go back. Miami was a laughingstock the last 2 years. It's really been a laughingstock the last 3 years under Mario, where people love to make fun of them. You can't win the ACC. You can't make the playoff. You lose to Louisville this year. You're not supposed to be in the playoff. Notre Dame, and maybe they shouldn't have been, according to Notre Dame. And yet here they are now, and Mario is about ready to have a red ass off with Signetti. And all of a sudden, all that narrative about Miami and Cristobal goes away until you lose to Indiana, and then we're right back.
So
yeah, if Miami ends up losing to Indiana 49-7, they'll say the same things about Miami that they're talking about with Oregon. Couple things. I thought promoting from within made sense if this is your team and you make a run at a title this year and you don't have a lot of hiccups. Yeah. Like 2 weeks ago, if you thought you were riding high or whatever, you now have had back-to-back seasons where you got blasted. Over in the second quarter, over in the first quarter.
Michael Irvin taking that belt to that ass.
Blasted. So my question to you is, as a coach and as a program, something to me it would seem would be falling flat. Wouldn't you want outside influence to come in at that point and say, okay, now 2 years in a row we've gotten smacked.
Different set of eyes.
We like our head coach. We like what we got. But maybe we need a new set of eyes to see something that we're not seeing in these long prep games. Because in some of these long prep games, we're not real ready. Do you think that's an overreaction, or do you think it does make sense on either the offensive side of the ball, probably because Stein was the quarterback coach, or the defensive side of the ball, you need to bring in a fresh face somewhere?
I say this all the time, that anytime I'm going to be critical of play calling, anytime I'm going to be critical of roster building, anytime, sorry, I've got my Stokes Light, my lovely beverage here.
What's a Stokes Light?
What is it?
I mean, is it a beer or what?
Yeah, it's an American smooth, crisp flavor lager.
Oh, so you're just drinking on the pot, huh?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Dude, okay. I'm at my buddy. I'm at my buddy's house right now.
Oh, my bad. We'll get out of here fairly quickly.
No, dude, believe me, this was all a setup. So we ended up having a day. Yeah. Right off camera here. I can do my honest. Would you like this single Jamaican rum?
Wow. Look at you.
Or would you prefer?
Oh my goodness. The trifecta. You're triple fisting right now.
4 I have.
Oh no, there's 4. Okay.
I've got my. Would you care to go for some mini bomb?
Okay. If you bring out shrooms, we're in trouble. Okay, so here's the thing.
Shut up! I just got told to stay out of things. Don't tell me.
Oh my God. Don't, you can't put that. It's a live YouTube video.
It's nuts.
Oh, okay. Thank God.
It's hazelnuts. Shut up. It's hazelnuts as far as you know. No. God. So no. So as I always say this, I'm always careful to be overly critical because I'm not in rooms. Like if I watch a protection that gets slaughtered, like I'm an O-line guy, right? And sometimes I'll watch something and I'm like, that doesn't make sense to me, right? And I'll usually try to preface it by saying, I don't know the protection, but someone screwed up. I don't know what that is. It's either on the center or the right guard, something. So it's the same thing with this. I don't know inside that room what the confidence is at the next level. In my opinion, if I'm Dan Lanning and I'm not Dan Lanning and I'm not Kurt Signetti, and I'm not going to sit here and pretend that I know how to build a roster better than they do. From an outsider's perspective, the fact that you aren't looking for a fresh set of eyes to me is not the wisest choice.
Sure.
I do not love that at all. When I heard that they were promoting from within instead of going to a national search, because Oregon has the money to buy good coaches. Oregon has the money to buy elite coaches.
Yeah.
I do not understand that in any way other than this. If you're Lanning and you feel that the program is coming to this point, right? Like we're in this every year that Lanning's been there. The roster has gotten better. It's gotten more talented and you've had a better result. You've won 10 games every year, right? And you go from losing the last year in the Pac-12 and the Pac-12 title game to winning the Big Ten and losing the first round, I guess technically the second round of the playoffs, right? But you get a bye. And then this year you don't win the Big Ten, but you win 11 games and you get out of the first round of the playoff and you get out of the second round of the playoff. So everything keeps growing, right? So is there an element of, with the transfer portal coming and in the midst of having to believe that you can win a national title this year, is it a lot easier when both coaches end up taking those jobs fairly late, right, in the process, and kind of were late candidates? It wasn't like Lapoy and Stein all year were the guys for those jobs. It kind of came together, especially Stein.
There was a strong belief Stein would leave. There was a lot of thought that Lanning and Lapoy was kind of a marriage made in heaven.
Yes.
Because the knock on Lupoi is that he doesn't feel very CEO-y.
Yes.
And so very defensive coordinator.
And so that happens. And you are trying to convince Dante Moore to come back, right? You're trying to convince your recruits to stick around. And I wonder if it was maybe the idea of you don't rock the boat and we keep our class together. We keep our roster together and everything just stays tight. And if we do that, this trajectory comes together. And behind closed doors, from what I have heard, they never felt that this was the year. They did not.
I said that in the preseason. Next year is the year.
I know for a fact that the interior belief, and not that they didn't think they could win it this year, but the belief for this coaching staff was that the honey hole years, this is our opportunity. It starts next year.
Right.
And then maybe the year after that. But next year was the one that they kind of had circled. Again, all your best running backs, freshmen, your quarterback, hopefully another year. Sadiq isn't going to be gone, but you have another, what you would think NFL tight end. You have young linemen.
Edge rushers might very well come back.
Your entire secondary basically is very young. Some of your linebackers you're going to have to replace, but there's some youngers that you like. And again, this is a team that keeps recruiting. So I don't love that they didn't search outside. It's not what I would think is best, but as long as I can understand the logic behind what you're doing, it's hard for me to be overly critical. And I can see the logic of keeping it together and not trying to rock the boat. I get it. Don't agree with it, but I get it.
Yeah. Your biggest needs next year, if Dante comes back, if you at least get one of those edge rushers, is linebacker. Cal's Uluave, the name that, the guy that impressed you that we talked about during the year when we were talking about Jaron Kiawe Sangapolutele, you were like, they have a defensive guy that's really good. He just entered the portal. He could fill in potentially for Betcher. There's some rumblings that potentially Oregon could go that route. And then I'm going to butcher his name. I believe it's Koi Perch. Yeah. He is the safety, I believe, from Minnesota. And he's exactly same kind of thing as Thieneman, where like a freshman All-American superstar. Mm-hmm. And by all accounts, Oregon is interested. So if Thieneman leaves, and I think he might, because safeties don't have the highest ceiling in the world, and he's like a second, third round pick. Yeah. Sadiq's already gone, but Johnson's great. Mm-hmm. And you very much went out of your way to get your third string tight end who you like a touchdown today. Yeah. All signs to me point to, hey, we got him the ball because we believe in him. We wanted to give him a little love. The running back room comes back. I think you look pretty good for next year. And I would look for them to potentially get Uluave, and I would look for them to get Thieneman. I also expect Dante Moore to come back. And there was a little sneaky little hint that he was coming back this week that I hope people caught. Hussein Longstreet, USC's 5-star quarterback, entered the portal, and Oregon immediately became the favorite. Mm-hmm. That's not because they think he's going to start right away.
Yeah.
That's your sit 1 year behind a guy, and you're the guy next year move. They're duplicating it. That's what it looks like to me.
Yeah.
So whether Moore leaves, and I don't think he will, and then you go get like a Sam Levitt or whatever, and then Longstreet sits for a year and then takes over the reins. The Longstreet thing is a signal that they have a guy. That's what that tells me, because you do not bank this 2027 team
on an unproven
2026, if you want to call it that. They'll play the title game in 2027. This coming year's team. You don't put that on a 5-star recruit that was a backup at USC. You put it on a guy because you think you're going to be good. And we talked about this all through the first 5 weeks of the year. We think next year is the year. Now, towards the middle part of the year, towards the end of the year, we went.
It changed a little bit.
They're arriving ahead of schedule, and they're playing really well. But I still have questions about the O-line. We still haven't seen this offense hit their stride in a big game yet. And you were much more, you pushed back on it much more than I did, where I said every game they go into in the playoffs is a coin flip, I think. Mm-hmm. And you were like, not if you haven't put together all 3 phases consistently, then you can't call it a coin flip.
Haven't done it all year.
And that's true. The one game, and the broadcasters said this, the one game that Lanning felt like all 3 phases played well together was Rutgers. That's the one game he said, and probably Oklahoma State too. He probably just left that game out. But those are the 2 That's not enough when you go into these games where Indiana had 4 or 5 or 6 of them.
It just never looked like a national championship team to me as the season wore on, starting with the offense. And, it came to fruition. I just didn't see it coming to this. I didn't think Oregon could get blown out like this. I didn't think the defense would allow it. And I think that's the hard part. And someone, on the YouTube chat here, and I get it, because we were talking about Oregon and next year and, patience and program building. And, that's what Cristobal said at Miami. And I think this is the hard part for every program in the country that's trying to build to a national title. But Indiana just gets to win a championship. Oregon has spent how much money, and the closest they had was 2010. 2014, they get blown out. India gets one shot and boom, glory. Two things. One, Indiana hasn't won jack shit yet. So let's hold off on that. I think we all believe Indiana is going to win. I said it. I think the national title comes from this game, and I think Indiana finishes it. And if they do, by the way, greatest coaching job in college football history, greatest story in college football history,
yes,
and one of the 3 greatest stories in sports history. This is Miracle on Ice stuff. Kurt Signetti, I am in absolute awe of what he's done. Be careful with Indiana did it in 2 years and everyone else has had to take these, Clemson took years and even Saban at Bama took years and all this stuff.
Andy Reid is maybe considered the best modern coach, or the best coach in modern NFL history. For a huge chunk of his career, he was the guy that couldn't get over the hump, and no one remembers that anymore.
Kirby took a while, even at Georgia with all their resources, and Mark Richt never got over the hump. But remember, we are living in a different world now. That's the other thing I think we can take out of this is the fact that Indiana is probably going to win a national championship. The old way of doing things, the old way of the SEC hoarding the talent and it being an SEC run college football and only having 3 or 4 teams every year that can win it. If Indiana does that, then it officially takes the knife and it stabs the old guard in the heart and it announces a new wave of football. And you can like it or not, but that's the truth of the matter. And the other thing is what's happening right now at Indiana, this would be impossible 4 years ago. It would be impossible 10 years ago, but certainly maybe even 3 years ago, what Indiana is doing right now is impossible. NIL, that Indiana had money to spend, and the transfer portal, and the fact that you apparently found literally one of the greatest coaches of all time at James Madison, who was the only real power job he's had was the wide receivers coach at Alabama. All of those things are amazing, but they could not exist in a past world. So yes, while I get why that is so frustrating for people to be like, oh my God, we've been trying to build toward this for 30 years and Indiana does it in 2. It's a different world that Indiana is building in, and it doesn't change it. It doesn't mean that Indiana's story isn't amazing and any less special. As I stated, greatest coaching job in the history, greatest story in the history of college football. But the landscape had to change for Indiana to get that done. And the fact that that we're sitting here talking about Indiana like the way we did that LSU Joe Burrow team, I don't know what to tell you, man. I would have never thought in a million years that we'd be sitting here having this discussion, but it's here and it's reality. And you may not like it, but deal with it. They whipped your ass and they whipped everybody's ass. And chances are they're going to whip Miami's ass next.
Yeah, I think this Indiana team clearly wins against Miami. I thought that was a third place game watching it last night. So many open receivers, so many miscues from both sides where, yes, plays were being made, but there were just a lot of mistakes being made.
Oh, Miami will give whoever plays them infinite chances to win that game. And you do that against Indiana, good luck.
Right. And I thought Oregon had largely corrected those mistakes. Yes, they made some, but their defense had been great. Their offense was good. I still thought there would be moments, significant moments where they would have long stretches, frankly, where they'd be good and button up and ready to go. And I thought, but Oregon's so much better than what we're seeing from Ole Miss and Miami. Not tonight. And I think that's the takeaway is as good as Oregon looked at times, they played their worst game at the wrong time against a team that was ready to capitalize on every mistake. And so you couldn't make many to win and still win, and you made a lot. And so you got absolutely blasted in all three phases. You had a punt blocked late. I mean, it was a disaster. I don't really have much more to say. I think next year's team is going to be very good. I think Dante Moore is a Heisman favorite. I think they'll hit the portal and get a couple of really good tackles. I think the defense is going to be better next year than it was this year. I think it's likely Mateo Uyunglele and Tatum Tuioti, at least one of the two, if not both, come back. I think they'll address linebacker. There are brighter days ahead. Dan Lanning is a good football coach, but I do, for the first time, if we're looking for like the big knock on Oregon, I think they do need one from somewhere, an outside hire, to come in. And I don't mean it head coach. For people that like they need a coordinator, they need a quarterback coach, they need fresh blood to come in and say, hey, we might want to think about doing some of this stuff. We've tried some of this in our big games, because they do seem to fall flat in big games. The thing that's nice, Dan Lanning doesn't lose to people he shouldn't. Mario Cristobal loses to people he shouldn't, but Dan Lanning doesn't hang with people that are favored. They just get steamrolled, and that's not okay either.
No, has not ended the last 2 years the way you wanted to. So totally get the frustration, and it's going to be a weird, long off season I told Joey Harrington was talking about this, and I said, if they lose this game, they will get no credit for the season they had. They will get no credit for winning 2 playoff games. And he was like, oh, I disagree. And I'm like, well, I'll see you next week and we'll talk about it. Because if they lose, no one will give 2 craps that they beat James Madison and Texas Tech and made the college football semis. Nobody will. It will be about this. But I was expecting we'd talk about a close loss. But after this one, they will get no credit for the season they had. And fair or not, that's the narrative. And when the narrative becomes so loud that it's the only thing out there, no one else will listen to anything else. There will not be positives that fans will remember from the season. And, for those kids and probably the coaches and stuff, that's a shame. But this is what happens when you try to play the bully and you set the expectation and you rub people the wrong way and you're cock of the walk, and the standard is national title. So this is the, I guess this is the downside that comes with it, is losses like this will linger for a long, long time. And it will be a long time before Boise State comes and you can try to get that taste out of your mouth.
Yeah. Thank you for folks who tuned in. I'm sorry we couldn't be a little more positive for you. Next year's going to be great, but it's hard to put lipstick on a pig. It just is. When the best comment I get, I have a cousin who's coached some football, was an all-state high school guy, played some college ball, messages me and says, this was really, really bad. But as a Raider fan, I'm pretty excited about Mendoza. When that's the takeaway from like a diehard Duck is like, well, at least we get Mendoza. I would guess a small percentage of Duck fans are also Raider fans. So there are very few people that have that silver lining. And when that's the silver lining, oh boy, that makes for a rough night. Subscribe wherever you get your podcast. Leave a comment, leave a review. That helps us. Don't leave a bad review. Leave a good review. I mean, for God's sake, Suke did this one while he was drinking from 5 different bottles of liquor. So clearly we deserve a 5-star review for not just stumbling through this entire thing. Thanks for listening. Appreciate you, everybody.